think about everything that you can think of in finance or markets, and the World Bank does it.
And this is to help countries.
This is to help countries get out of poverty.
What does the World Bank get out of it?
So the folks that are in the World Bank loan program don't want to graduate. And so we've created a system where everybody wants to stay in their box, and they don't necessarily want to leave. Many of the World Bank employees are like, hey, this is great. I got a great job, and I'm not really incented to change things.
What is the World Bank?
Oh boy. How much time do we have? Is this like one of these 5-hour interviews? I can go on forever and ever, but I'll distill it to the more salient points. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. It starts with history. After World War II, Europe was decimated. And so the United States decided to create a vehicle, an institution, to originally, that's the origin of it, to rebuild Europe. And I think the first loan was to France, if memory serves, and it was like $100 million. Over the years, after Europe was rebuilt, the World Bank moved into another category, which is we want to eliminate poverty and to promote shared wealth creation, shared prosperity. So that was the World Bank and is the World Bank as I joined it. So what the World Bank does is...
Is it a private institution?
No, it's a multilateral institution that's owned by a bunch of different countries, almost every country in the world, with the exception of, say, like Cuba, North Korea, folks like that.
Who would be the
We are the
country
biggest
with the
shareholder.
most shares?
We are, by far. And so it's different than the United Nations. At the UN, it's one country, one vote, right? So a small country in Southeast Asia might have the same vote as the United States. At the World Bank, we started out with a very large shareholding, and that has whittled down. I think we're at about 16% or so.
How does it whittle down?
So there's a formula. It's called the dynamic formula. It basically works like this. Your shareholding is a function of two factors. One is your growth of your economy, your GDP growth, and the other is how much you contribute to the bank. It's 20% based on contributions and 80%, ballpark, my numbers may be off a little bit, but it's 80% based on how your economy grows. So what's concerning is that for years and years and years, China's economy has been on a plane like that, and the United States has sort of stayed like this. And so China has not contributed very much until recently, but yet their shareholding grew exponentially. I'm not sure why that is, because we contribute far more than any other country, but it is what it is.
So are they the second largest shareholder?
They would have been, but they're not. They're probably, and I say would have been because there were some changes 4 or 5 years ago that prevented them from being the second largest shareholder. And it was most likely for that reason that they created their own version of the World Bank called the AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure Development Bank. So they have a competitor to the World Bank. And that's why they did it, most likely. But, the bigger shareholders are, after the US, Japan, a number of European countries, and it sort of goes down, from there.
And so the mission of the World Bank is to
promote shared prosperity and to eliminate poverty.
How do they do that? Invest in countries?
Yeah. So if you think about the cap stack, I'm using technical terms, but if you think about ways in which you can contribute money, you can do it through loans. So the World Bank can loan money to governments, okay? Track 1. Track 2 is you can provide money in the form of grants. Grants are free money. You can provide loans to companies in certain countries. You can invest in equity. You can provide a loan guarantee. A loan guarantee is if the loan doesn't get repaid, the World Bank will guarantee it. Insurance products. So think about everything that you can think of in finance or markets, and the World Bank does it.
And this is to help countries.
This is to help countries get out of poverty.
What does the World Bank get out of it?
Cynically, I mean, no, look, the World Bank is a phenomenal institution, and there are a lot of well-intentioned people. But there are a lot of, I'm gonna go with a number here. There are probably 13 to 15,000 people full time at the bank. What they get out of it is a great job, and there are probably another 15,000 consultants, and so that's what the World Bank gets out of it. Plus, there are a lot of very well-intentioned, very good people working at the bank who really care about solving poverty. They could have gone to the private sector. They could have gone to J.P. Morgan or Goldman Sachs, but they said, no, this is what I want to do because it's meaningful to them. But sometimes, Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's business partner for years, has this famous quote that said something like, show me your incentives and I'll show you the outcome. And so we put hundreds and hundreds of billions into emerging markets and developing markets. In some cases, we've seen change, but in many cases, we haven't because there's a misalignment of interests. Let me explain what that means. If you're a desperately poor country, right, you get grants. Grants are free money, as I mentioned earlier. But as you move up the poverty scale and you get yourself out of poverty as measured by GDP per capita and a few other factors, then you graduate. You don't get the free money anymore. You get into the loan program. And so desperately poor countries are like, do I want do I want free money more or do I want to get a loan? So they don't necessarily want to graduate. I'm certain people are going to say, oh, Eric, you're being silly. I mean, of course, everybody wants to get out of poverty. But the incentive structure isn't aligned for that. And then once you're in the loan program, you're getting very inexpensive loans. The LIBOR, whatever, the prevailing rate of interest plus, a few basis points, right? 10 or, 15 basis points, 50 basis points, even 80. Is pretty good. That's 0.8% on top of the prevailing rate. That's pretty darn good. But once you graduate out of the loan program, then you have to go to the markets. And the markets, price you at, 800 basis points over the prevailing rate. So the folks that are in the World Bank loan program don't want to graduate. And so we've created a system where everybody wants to stay in their box and, they don't necessarily want to leave. And then many, not all, but many of the World Bank employees are like, hey, this is great. I got a great job. And I'm not really incented to, to change things. And so, it becomes a challenge.
Interesting.
And I say this, a little bit with a heavy heart because what do we all want to do? We all want to get people out of poverty. I mean, there are people that are living on less than $1 a day, right? So what if we were to create an incentive system, not like the current one, but where we actually reward the individuals at the bank and we reward the countries for getting out of poverty? Fix the incentives.
How would you do that?
There are a lot of ways, but it would require a big restructuring of the World Bank. You would have to incentivize the individuals working there to show results. You show me a result, a tangible result after a given period of time, and you get a reward.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.